Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin. I am a homeschooling mom of 4, and I often share my curriculum reviews as we get to the end of different curriculum, and we are closing up this school year. And today we're going to talk about Logic of English Foundations D. So if you have been around for a while, I have done reviews over all of the other Logic of English levels as my oldest son has gone through them. And we have just wrapped up Foundations D last week. And so I wanted to pop on here and do just a quick review of Foundations D. I know that since this is later on in the program, probably the people watching these reviews are not people who are deciding if they want to pick Logic of English for their kindergartner, right? Because this is like the 4th book in the series. But typically the people who watch these later on reviews I found are other Logic of English parents who are already in A or B or C and are looking ahead to D. So I wanted to just do a quick review for you guys so that you can kind of see what I thought about the program wrapping up and, you know, this last level, what are our plans going forward, that kind of stuff. So first of all, I will just say I still love Logic of English. So just in case you're not familiar, Logic of English has 4 levels of foundations, foundations A, B, C, and D. And then after that, you can move on to their program called Essentials. And so my son, he started with A and B in kindergarten, and then he did C last year in what would be considered 1st grade. You know, we homeschool, so grade levels are kind of fluid, but his 2nd year of school. And then he did D in what would be considered 2nd grade. And I absolutely love this program. I loved it back in A, and I've loved it all the way through. I just feel like it is a fantastic, phenomenal program for teaching kids the logic behind English and helping them have really strong grammar and reading and spelling. I love that the program is all in one. I love that you don't have to have one program for handwriting and one for reading and one for, you know, spelling or whatever. It's just all one big program together. So definitely do not regret starting with this program. I think it's wonderful. My 2nd child he's finishing up his kindergarten year, so I've gotten to do A and B again with him, and can plan to continue to use it with all of my kids coming up as they get older through homeschooling. So I absolutely love it. So like I said, this is mostly for people who are already familiar with Logic of English. Most people who don't know much about Logic of English aren't going to be watching this video. So for those of you who know about it, you know, the first book is lessons 1 through 40. Book 2, level B, is 41 through 80. C is 81 through 120, and then D is 121 through 160, and that finishes it up. And one thing, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in my other videos, but I really like how each book just picks right back up at the end of the last book. I know in a lot of curriculums, you know, you do maybe your kindergarten level, and then 1st grade is like a bunch of review for the first several lessons from the previous level. With Logic of English, it's all just kind of like a continuum, and so you finish one book and you could literally just pick up the next one and begin right away. Like with previous levels, you have your teacher manual and you have a student workbook. Like with level C, there's one student workbook whether your child learned cursive or manuscript. If you remember back in A and B, you picked your workbook based on if your child was learning cursive or manuscript. But once you get to C, and then again with D, it's the same workbook, and then they just write however you as the parent, as the teacher, want to have them write. So they have their workbook, and then there's a set of readers like there were in the previous levels. So readers that Logic of English writes to go with the curriculum, as well as a book list. So you can purchase this bundle of books straight from Logic of English's website. I will have everything linked in the comments, but you can purchase this all together from them, or you can just find them on Amazon or thrift books or whatever and purchase them one by one, which is what I did. I just took a little bit of time one day and I looked up each of the titles that was in that list on thrift books and on Amazon. And I found which one was cheaper, because in some cases Amazon was actually cheaper than thrift books and then vice versa. So I looked them up, and added up, you know, like filled my cart on each site and added that up. And that total was less, not by a ton, maybe like $10 or $15 cheaper to purchase them from Thrift Books and Amazon versus Logic English. So I did that, but if you don't want to take the time, like I said, it's not a huge cost savings. You can just order straight from the website. You get all these books because these are going to go along with the lessons. And then there are some cards, like some grammar cards. I forgot to grab those and bring them up here when I was doing the video, but you mostly are just continuing to use all the phonogram cards and the game cards and that kind of stuff from the past levels. There's not a whole lot extra added to level D. As far as the structure of the lessons goes, it's very similar to everything you have seen in A, B, and C as far as, you know, what it looks like and how they have you do each lesson. I'm gonna turn the camera around and I'll show you an example lesson and point it out, but they're similar to what you're used to already, and all the lessons in D follow like a very similar pattern. So they all kind of have the same structure each time you do a different lesson. So I'll show you those so you can kind of see the inside of the book and kind of what to expect. Before we do that and I show you the lessons, one thing I want to point out about the books, the readers from Logic English and the books that you get separate, is they kind of pair together. So a lot of the focus of level D is like fiction versus nonfiction. And so what Logic of English has done is they have the readers that they create are fiction, and each of them matches up with one of the books that they have you purchase that are nonfiction. So you may have, and then they're usually talked about in like back-to-back lessons. So you have a lesson where you read maybe this polar opposites fiction book, discuss it, and I'll show you that, you know, in a minute, kind of some of the things they discuss. And then in the next lesson, you may read this Arctic and Antarctic polar opposites book, which is a nonfiction book that has, you know, talks about, this is bears and penguins, and this talks about bears and penguins. Another example is you've got upstairs mouse, downstairs mole, your fiction book here, and then they have written a nonfiction book that kind of compares and contrasts mouse and mole here. And so kind of like they're kind of paired up, the books that you buy, so that you're seeing different perspectives and that kind of thing. All right, here's an example, lesson 134. So you start off with quizzing them on 30 of the phonograms. You just pick 30 from the 75 that they learned in A, B, and C. Then we move on to spelling, and we are doing some practice with silent final E and when do you drop it when you're adding a suffix and when do you not drop it when you're adding a suffix. So you do that with them, and then in their workbook, they have this worksheet where they would, you know, add the suffix and then write what the correct word should be underneath. Then there's some vocabulary where they're learning about abbreviations, and then a worksheet, just a quick one where they match the abbreviation with the word. Then there's some grammar talking about common nouns and proper nouns. And then we have spelling analysis. So they have 8 words every lesson that they work on spelling. And then reading. So in this particular lesson, they were reading this book, Fish Out of Water, which is this one right here. So they read the book and discuss the book. And then just side note, because I just mentioned this, but in the next lesson, they would read this other book that's written, you know, for the Logic English curriculum. That is a nonfiction book. But anyway, so after the reading, then there's some dictation. So you just give them this sentence and then have them write it. And then it finishes up with a spelling activity to practice these spelling words here. So each of the lessons in D follow pretty much the exact same pattern, which is phonogram practice of some kind. It might be a game, it might be a quick quiz, it might be just read them quickly, whatever. It gives you some prompts. But there's phonogram practice, then there's like grammar and spelling rules, followed by spelling analysis, followed by some sort of reading comprehension type stuff, usually some writing that goes along with the reading, and then finishes with some more spelling practice. They all kind of follow that exact same pattern with those chunks of material. So a couple of other things, just now that I've shown you that lesson, that I just want to kind of like tips and thoughts about Foundations D. First of all, if you're watching this and your kid is still an A, B, or C, just know you do not have to have, or your child does not have to have phonogram mastery in order to do D. As you, excuse me, as you saw, they practice their phonograms every single lesson. And I have peeked ahead to Essentials, and they continue practicing them in Essentials as well. So don't stress if your child does not have them all perfectly, just an FYI, because I felt like even back in A and B, like we have to have these mastered before we can move on. And I would stress about like, we need to do extra phonogram practice in the summer. I mean, you can if you want to, but they don't have to. They're going to continue practicing it through every single lesson. As far as how long it took us to get through D, because I get those questions on lots of the videos that I make when I review curriculum. It did take us the full school year to get through it, but that was working very slowly, just a little bit at a time. We could have definitely gone through it faster. I just didn't feel like there was a need to, and so I didn't push it. I would break the lessons up into 2 to 3 days per lesson. And then of course there's assessments every 5 lessons or so. But we broke them up just, you know, so that we could keep our lessons really short. We could have easily done a lesson a day, especially because some of it we were able to skip over, which I'll share about in a second. It just depends on your child, you know. If your child really needs to do every single step of every single lesson, you probably will definitely want to break them up. Mine, you know, we could have gone a little bit faster, but I just felt like we were at a good pace and there was no need. I was not ready to start him into Essentials this year. I wanted to, you know, just take it slow, and so we did, and that was fine. But it's 40 lessons plus assessments, so maybe we'll say like 45 to 50 total lessons if you count the assessment as a lesson. But like I said, they're kind of long, and so you could definitely break them up if you needed to do that. And this is just your reminder that you make this curriculum work for yourself, and all curriculums, honestly. You know, slow down on areas, go faster on areas, skip things, add things, whatever. You make it work for you. Logic of English is an amazing full curriculum the way it's written, and you can absolutely just follow it the way it is. But as you learn your child, you may find that certain things work well and certain things don't. I mentioned this in my Foundation C review, but in A and B, we did the whole thing. All of that was stuff that my son needed, and so we stuck to the way the lesson was written. When we got to C, about halfway through, his reading took off at a much faster pace than his other skills, and really he kind of was well past what Logic of English was doing in the reading at the end of C. And so as we got in B, that gap, it continued. So for example, he still does not have his phonograms mastered. So we did every lesson practice the phonograms. However, I did not always do the games that are recommended. You know, I knew after I'd done several lessons in D that the first thing in every lesson was going to be a phonogram review. But I made that work for us. Sometimes we did the quiz that they recommended. Sometimes we did the game they recommended. Sometimes I would just pull up the Logic of English app on my phone, which if you didn't know that there was an app, there is. I can't remember if it's free or if it's pretty inexpensive if it's not free. But there is an app, and he would just play the little game that practices the phonograms. So, because this is my first year homeschooling a second child and also having a baby, like a newborn, while I was doing school. So we modified things this year to make it easier for us. So we did practice the phonograms, but we did not always do it as it was written. The second chunk, which was like the new grammar, spelling rules, that kind of stuff. That was all new material for the most part for us. And so we did that part. Then we got to spelling analysis. If you have not checked out the free spelling analysis videos on the Logic of English website, I highly recommend them. So Logic of English has an online version of each of their levels of foundations that you can like purchase and pay for, and it's like an online class, kind of like a self-paced one. But they also have a free version of each of those. And the free version of D, the only thing it has is the spelling analysis from every single lesson. But that for me was like, that's all I really need. And so I'm so thankful that they have made that available, because I feel like I'm not a strong speller myself. And so trying to prompt my child to spell when I'm not like the best speller is not easy. And we really like kind of had some problems with that back before I discovered the spelling analysis videos, like maybe in C or B, probably C. But anyway, yeah, so when we did that lesson, usually the way we would break it up is we would do the first lesson, would be the phonogram practice and the new spelling and grammar, and then we would stop. And then the second half of the lesson, the next day, we would pick up with spelling analysis and then the reading stuff. So I would just pull it up on my computer, give him his workbook. He would listen to the prompts and spell along with Denise and pause it as he needed to. And that was so helpful, because it just really like helped us, for me not trying to have to drag the spelling out of him, because he is not a strong speller. And so that was like, it was frustrating for both of us. And with using the online spelling analysis, that really helped. He still didn't enjoy it. He would complain whenever we got to spelling analysis. He didn't like it, but it definitely made it easier for her to prompt him versus me. So anyway, so spelling analysis, we used online for that. Then the next thing after that, you know, as you saw in when I did the flip through, was the reading. And this part right here, he's reading head and shoulders above what level D has in its curriculum. And his comprehension is very good, and I know that. And so I did not feel like we needed to sit and do every single question that it prompts you to ask them. So I would have him read the books. If it was the nonfiction, if it was the fiction book, I would just have him read it to his siblings, and that would basically be it, because like I said, he can pretty much recall any story he reads to me. And so I already know that just from the nature of being his mom and homeschooling him for 3 years. And anyway, so we wouldn't do like all the reading comprehension stuff. With the nonfiction, he loves nonfiction, and so he loved to read those. And so he would read those to himself or to his younger siblings on those days when we had nonfiction books. But again, I didn't like go through all of the reading comprehension questions. If there was an activity that was like a Venn diagram, or compare and contrast, or make a list of, you know, traits, you know, that mouse had, traits the mole had, we did do that part. But as far as like the actual reading part, we didn't spend a lot of time on that because he didn't need that section. But like I said, we would do, you know, the dictation, practicing his handwriting, any of the like writing prompts that went along with the reading. We did that. And the last thing was, again, spelling. It was like practice of those same 8 spelling words. We skipped that almost every single time. There's only a few times we did that because, like I said, spelling has been a real struggle. He is not a great speller, and it was just like very stressful to, you know, he already had spelling analysis, he'd already done that, and then to turn around and to do more practice of those same words, typically on the same day or the next day. It was just a lot. And so after doing some reading and hearing from a lot of other parents that most kids do not leave Foundations D being like phenomenal spellers. Essentials continues on spelling. They continue getting practice in spelling. And as they mature, they get better. I just decided not to push it. So that was a personal decision, but I decided not to push it. So I had him do the spelling analysis, and just go through that video and practice the spelling, but we didn't do any spelling like activities past that. And we are moving on to essentials next year. I'll share more about that in a second, but We'll continue working on spelling. And from what I hear, essentials is where they really cement that spelling. So I'm not too worried about it. If at some point we realize it's an issue, we can go back and we can practice it some more. But for right now, I felt like just doing the spelling analysis was enough to ask out of him and not to just like make him hate language arts because we were constantly shoving spelling down his throat. So personal decision for our family. You do what works for your family, you know? All right, so like I mentioned, we are moving on to essentials. So we do classical conversations, and I know many people who watch my videos do as well. And so in classical conversations, they also have a foundations and essentials, which is completely separate from Logic of English's foundations and essentials, but it is confusing. In classical conversations, in the foundations years, the kids, they have their CC stuff, and then they need an added language arts curriculum and math curriculum. So, but then when they get to CC, classical conversations essentials, that adds in a language arts component. And so you no longer need to do a separate language arts curriculum with them if you don't want to. So my son, he still has a year, like this next coming school year, he will still be foundations only at classical conversations and is not yet in essentials there. And so I was kind of like, what should I do? Should we take a year and just practice spelling, practice phonograms, and let him read a lot and not do any formal curriculum? Is there something else we should do? Should we move into Logic of English essentials, knowing that we probably won't complete the program? So I talked to some other parents who have already taken their kids, that are CC parents that have taken their kids through this, and most everyone said that Logic of English essentials is a fantastic base for the classical conversations essentials, and that even if you don't complete the whole entire curriculum, doing the first or second chunk of Logic of English essentials really gives your kids a good foundation for when they move into essentials in CC. So we decided that's what we're gonna do. So I have ordered the first, those are in units. So I have ordered the first set of units for Logic of English essentials. And so next year, which is what would be considered my son's 3rd grade year, we will be doing that. And I don't know how far we will go into it before he then moves into the classical conversations essentials that he'll be doing. But we are going to at least do it for next year and then see, you know, how far we get and what we want to do past that. So anyway, that is our plan. I love Logic of English. It's been amazing. Really happy with the program. Happy and excited to continue on using the essentials level. So anyway, I hope that's helpful as you're looking at Foundations D. Like I said, everything I mentioned will be linked below so you can find stuff that I talked about. But anyway, I hope that is helpful. Bye guys.